Hi, welcome to True Crime with Emma Kenny. My channel is dedicated to looking at some of the biggest crimes that you will have ever heard of. Mick Philpott, he literally burnt his children to death. Chris Watts, he murdered not only his pregnant wife, but his two absolutely adorable children. We're also going to go back in time. Let's look at Hindley and Brady. What creates that folie à deux? How can people who ordinarily might have travelled through life completely under the radar suddenly come to the front of our memories because they have done something so reprehensible it literally shakes the world? We are going to know no bounds. I want your interaction. Send me your ideas, ask me questions. So when you subscribe, when you connect, I'm going to make an absolute effort to answer questions every single week so that you can find out that little bit more about the intriguing aspects that sometimes I just don't get to talk about on TV. One of the things that I want to make clear is you're not going to see Emma Kenny from the television on this channel. It's not that I don't love what I do, it's just that you have to be moderate in your perspectives. Understandably, you have to back everything up with research, and essentially sometimes that can mean that I don't really get to tell you the way I truly feel. And you might be really surprised about the way I feel because it's very easy, isn't it, on screen to come across as there being a victim and a perpetrator, and there's nowhere in between. But actually, if you really want to understand crime, you have to understand what creates a criminal. You have to understand the incidences that they go through in their world that brings them to a tipping point. And that isn't ever to make any crime excusable. But unless we're talking about what creates these people, we can never create the cure for these people. I want you to ask as many questions as possible. This is a collaborative experience. If you work in the field, get in touch. If you're a layperson who's been involved in this kind of a crime, get in touch. The whole point is this is an interactive experience. It gives me the chance to get to know you better, and it will certainly give you the chance to get to know me better. This is a no holds barred. I am going to be telling you my opinion. Everybody's opinions are welcome. This is not about empirically based research. It's not about me sticking to the rules, because the truth is, I don't think we learn anything new when we don't talk about our own personal experiences and opinions. So understand, these are all my views, and that's why I'm doing this channel, because you won't have heard my views nowhere. I'm always asked the question, are killers born evil? The truth is, I think that some are, but most, I genuinely believe, are formed. I believe that it is nurture that activates the ingredients of possibility, and it's knowing those ingredients of possibility, those contributory factors, that means that if we understand them more, we can prevent people from being killed. Whilst there are some killers that you can look at and see that their whole life, their whole experience has been traumatic, they've been abused, and that never gives them an excuse for murdering anybody. But you understand that there are these indicators and contributory factors that have led to these awful actions. But sometimes, occasionally, you get an individual who, to all intents and purposes, should be running a company as a CEO with all the opportunities that they've had, and yet they murder their entire family. You see, that's where evil lives. That's where fear lurks. Those people that by all rights should just be successful because they had everything given to them. One of the most intriguing questions that I ask myself constantly is, how do you carry on loving somebody who wipes out their entire family? This isn't uncommon. We see examples of this with Chris Watts, where literally his whole family still want him in their life. This is a man who killed their nieces, their grandchildren. He spared them no mercy. And yet for whatever reason, they still invite him into their lives. They visit him, they write him letters, they tell them that they love him. How do you love someone so evil? I'm going to be asking some really challenging questions on this channel, and I'm going to be asking you guys to engage in responding. Like, how would you feel if somebody that you loved, a member of your family, murdered their partner or their children? What are the limits on your forgiveness? Could you accept their crime and still support them? Would you aid and abet them? It's not that I even have the answers, but I think by having these conversations, we're probably going to be able to grow a collaborative knowledge which will give us an insight into what creates killers and also what forms them. Because you might imagine that abuse is key, but sometimes it can be an over-forgiving family who just always let that person get away with whatever they wanted without any consequences. As a human being, every single one of us is capable of evil. That might be really hard to digest, but there's always a tipping point for everybody. Think about it. You might believe that you would never harm a hair on the head of anybody, but then imagine that they've killed your child. Would you, if you had the chance, make sure that they never got to do that again? Do you believe in the death penalty? Is just killing acceptable? You see, when we actually start thinking about what makes us human and what our limits are, very often it isn't as black and white as we think. There is almost more interest to me in not concentrating just on the stereotypical reasons why somebody becomes a killer, because actually it's in those that don't have the contributory factors that there's more interest. The person who lives next door to you, who just seems to be the most ordinary great guy or great girl, and only years later do you find out that they've been responsible for heinous crimes. How do they live in our society undiscovered? And how don't we have that sixth sense around those individuals? Because of course, there are some people that you can look at in pictures or on crime documentaries, and you almost automatically believe that there is a reason for them committing those crimes. They look like they fit that agenda. But there are so many people who aren't anything like that. They are the wolves in sheep's clothing. They move amongst us. And the truth is, that's where terror lies. In the fact that one day, you might just go around for a cup of tea with that person that you've often had a conversation with, and you'll never leave the house. What is it about serial killers keeping mementos? We know that most serial killers keep property of the people that they killed, even though evidentially that's often how they are found out in the long term. But there is something so necessary, so desirable, so iconic for them to retain something that brings them back to that moment. Because that's what it's about. It's about holding something that reminds them of the gruesomeness and the grotesqueness of that crime, as opposed to it creating aversion, it creates connection. And power. What is it about power? We see even now Helen's Law going through in the UK because we have people who have murdered their victims refusing to tell the families where their bodies lie, refusing to give them the honour of the opportunity of laying them to rest. These are people with no conscience. Because ask yourself this question: would you feel comfortable letting a person walk free from prison who has refused to accept their crime and who's retained power and abuse over a family their entire sentence? Would that make you feel safe if he moved next door? One of the cases that really stays with me is that of Linda Jones. Her daughter Danielle walked out of the house to go to school one day and she never came home. Linda stayed in the same property, not because she doesn't know that Danielle's dead, but because the killer has never allowed her the grace of finding that body so that she can take her child home. She's stuck in a belief that maybe, just one day, Danielle could walk through that door. How can killers do this? And moreover, how can we ever let anybody out of prison who refuses to accept their crime? To me, that means they are a walking danger. They are a killing waiting to happen. Stuart Campbell is up for parole this year. Imagine how that feels for Linda. Danielle's killer has the potential to walk free, while she is kept in a prison for the rest of her life, and he still has an abusive power over her and her family. Is that right? Is that acceptable? Is that truly a justice system, or is that an injustice system?